The deception. Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen stood at the observation deck, watching as the Galactic Consortium vessels came into view. The massive alien ships dwarfed Earth's orbital station, their sleek hulls gleaming under the station's lights. This was to be humanity's grand entrance into the galactic community, a gift of slightly used warships from the technologically superior consortium. But something felt wrong. Magnificent, aren't they? Ambassador Vrax's translator converted his clicking speech into smooth English. The tall, mantis-like alien's compound eyes reflected the stars outside. The consortium has selected 16 of our previous generation defensive vessels as a gesture of goodwill toward Earth. Maya nodded politely. The United Earth government is grateful for such generosity. The words tasted bitter. In her 15 years of service in Earth's nascent space fleet, she'd learned to recognize when someone was selling snake oil. These aliens, with their advanced technology and seemingly benevolent offers, had negotiated favorable mining rights on 3 continents in exchange for protection and technological assistance. The first of the gifted vessels drifted into the docking bay, and Maya's heart sank. The ship's hull was pitted with what appeared to be corrosion. Panels were missing, and what should have been sleek lines were marred by obvious damage. As discussed, Vrax continued, his mandibles clicking in what Maya had learned was amusement. The vessels require some refurbishment, but for a species just beginning to explore beyond their own moon, they should provide adequate protection. Maya caught the condescension in his tone. The consortium viewed humans as primitive, barely worth notice except for Earth's abundant rare minerals and unique biological diversity. "We'll begin inspections immediately," she replied, keeping her face neutral. 3 hours later, she stood in the sealed conference room with Admiral Harrison and Chief Engineer Okafor. The holographic displays showed detailed scans of the gift ships. "They're not just old, they're sabotage," Maya said, pointing to specific areas on the display. "Look here and here. These aren't random damage patterns. These are precise cuts to navigation, weapons, and propulsion systems." Okafor nodded. His dark eyes narrowed as he manipulated the display. "It's like they took a surgical laser to the control interfaces. The primary systems are intact, but accessing them." He shook his head. "It would take years to reverse engineer." Admiral Harrison, gray-haired and battle-scarred from the water wars of the 2080s, leaned forward. "They're laughing at us, giving us ships they know we can't use, while they mine our planets dry." "Maybe not," Maya said slowly, an idea forming. "What if we let them keep laughing?" "Explain," Harrison said. "The consortium thinks we're technological infants. They expect us to struggle with these ships for decades, keeping us dependent on their guidance." Maya zoomed in on a particular section of the scans. "But look here, the quantum processor cores are intact. They've damaged the interfaces, not the systems themselves." Okafor's eyes widened. "If we could build new interfaces." "Exactly," Maya said. "But here's the key. We don't let them know we're doing it. On the surface, we struggle exactly as they expect. We make slow, visible progress that matches their expectations. Meanwhile, in secure facilities," Harrison caught on, "we actually restore the ships properly, maybe even improve them." "It would take a massive operation," Okafor cautioned. "Thousands of engineers working in secret. Better than being the consortium's pet project until they've stripped our world bare," Maya replied. Harrison was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. "I'll take this to the Security Council. If they approve, Commander Chen, you'll be project lead." 3 days later, Operation Phoenix was born. The public face of the project was exactly what the consortium expected. Humans clumsily trying to understand alien technology, making minor repairs that were largely cosmetic. Ambassador Vrax and his team made regular inspection visits, barely hiding their amusement at humanity's primitive efforts. "Your persistence is admirable," Vrax told Maya during one such visit, 6 months into the project. They stood in a carefully prepared hangar where engineers pretended to struggle with a basic propulsion system. Many species would have simply given up. Humans are stubborn, Maya replied with a forced smile. We keep trying long after smarter beings would stop. What Vrax didn't see, what the consortium's surveillance never detected, were the real facilities, buried deep in the Himalayas, under the Antarctic ice, and in converted mine shafts in Australia. There, Earth's brightest minds worked around the clock, not just to repair the ships, but to understand them at a fundamental level. A year into the project, Dr. Emilia Santos, head of the Neural Interface Division, made the first breakthrough. The consortium designed these ships with neural links. She explained to Maya, her excitement barely contained. But their approach was hierarchical, pilots giving orders to the ship's systems. We found something deeper in the code, something they either didn't understand or chose to ignore. What is it? Maya asked. These ships were designed to bond with their pilots, not just obey them. The quantum cores can form true symbiotic relationships. Santos' eyes gleamed. And human neural patterns are actually more compatible with the system than the consortium's. You're saying we can fly these ships better than they could. I'm saying we can do things with these ships the consortium never dreamed of. As the official 2-year mark of the project approached, the consortium's oversight became more sporadic. They were satisfied with Earth's apparent lack of progress. In their reports, the ridiculous humans had managed to get life support functioning on 3 ships and had achieved minimal thruster capabilities on 1. At this rate, it would take decades for Earth to field even a rudimentary defense force, exactly as Maya had planned. In reality, 12 of the 16 ships had been fully restored. More than that, they had been transformed. The neural interfaces had been completely rebuilt, allowing for deeper connections than the original designs. The weapon systems had been upgraded with Earth's own innovations. The propulsion systems now incorporated quantum entanglement principles that humanity had been quietly developing before first contact. And in the most heavily guarded facility of all, beneath the Pacific Ocean floor, Maya stood before the flagship of their fleet, now named the Phoenix, its once corroded hull now gleaming with a matte black carbon nanofiber coating that absorbed both light and sensor scans. She's ready for neural integration testing, Santos said, handing Maya a sleek headset. Maya took a deep breath. Then let's see what she can do. As she settled into the pilot's chair and placed the headset on her temples, she had no way of knowing that light years away the Consortium High Council was finalizing their plans to regrettably take direct control of Earth's resource extraction operations, using the humans' failure to properly maintain their gift ships as justification. The deception was working perfectly, perhaps too perfectly. The awakening. The neural interface hummed against Maya's temples as she closed her eyes. For a moment, there was nothing. Then a flash of connection so intense she gasped. The Phoenix wasn't just responding to her commands. It was meeting her halfway, reaching for her mind, as eagerly as she reached for its systems. Hello, she thought, not really expecting a response. A sensation flooded her consciousness. Not words, but a feeling of recognition, of welcome. The ship wasn't simply accepting her control. It was offering partnership. Neural sync at 87%. Santos reported from her monitoring station, voice tight with controlled excitement. That's nearly double what the consortium's manuals indicated as maximum potential. Maya opened her eyes, but it didn't diminish her connection to the ship. She could feel every system, every circuit, as if they were extensions of her own body. The Phoenix wasn't just a vessel. It was alive in a way she couldn't fully articulate. Let's try movement, she said. The Phoenix responded before she'd even fully formed the thought. The massive ship lifted from its berth with impossible grace, hovering in the cavernous underwater hangar. Thrust at 4% capacity, one of the engineers called out. Stability perfect. Maya smiled. They had done it. 3 years of deception, of working in shadows while maintaining a facade of incompetence for the consortium observers. It had all led to this moment. Over the next 6 months, The true fleet took shape. All 16 ships were fully operational, each bonded with a carefully selected pilot. The neural interfaces allowed for unprecedented precision and coordination. In hidden training exercises conducted deep in the asteroid belt, the ships demonstrated capabilities that would have astonished the consortium. Meanwhile, the public face of the project continued exactly as planned. The consortium's quarterly inspections found exactly what they expected: slow, marginal progress. Humans celebrating when they managed to get a ship to move under its own power at a fraction of its potential speed. Engineers scratching their heads over weapon systems that remained stubbornly offline. Ambassador Vrax had stopped attending these inspections personally, sending lower-ranked officials instead. Earth was no longer interesting, just another primitive world being guided toward eventual absorption into the consortium's expanding influence. During a rare private dinner with the consortium delegation, Maya played her role perfectly, the dedicated but frustrated project leader. The targeting systems on the fourth vessel continue to resist our best efforts, she told the consortium representative, an elongated being named Nexel. We've managed to restore basic functionality, but accuracy is still well below what would be useful in any defensive scenario. Nexel's facial membranes rippled in what Maya had learned was their species' equivalent of condescending amusement. Perhaps in another decade, your people will have sufficient understanding to make proper use of the guidance systems. The consortium appreciates your persistence. We're grateful for your patience, Maya replied, raising her glass in a toast. To continued cooperation. What Nexel didn't know was that the Phoenix fleet had already developed targeting systems more precise than anything the consortium possessed, capable of disabling an enemy vessel's specific systems without destroying the ship. After the delegation departed, Admiral Harrison called an emergency meeting. His face was grim as the holographic display activated, showing a massive consortium fleet assembling at the edge of Earth's solar system. Our deep space monitoring stations picked this up 12 hours ago, he said. 57 vessels, including 3 Harvest-class ships. Maya felt her blood run cold. Harvest-class ships weren't designed for war. They were designed for resource extraction on a planetary scale. They're coming for Earth, she said quietly. Harrison nodded. The Consortium High Council has issued a statement expressing grave concern over Earth's failure to properly maintain the gifted fleet. They claim this demonstrates humanity's technological immaturity and justifies direct consortium management of Earth's resources. Chief Engineer Okafor snorted. They never expected us to fix those ships in the first place. Now they think they have the perfect excuse, Santos added. Swoop in, take what they want, and paint themselves as benevolent guardians guiding the poor primitive humans. Maya studied the fleet formations. When do they arrive? 3 days, Harrison replied. They're moving slowly, confident we can't pose any threat. They've requested that we power down our partially functional ships as a safety precaution during their arrival. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. We're not ready, Santos said finally. The neural interfaces are stable, but we've only run simulated combat scenarios. We haven't tested the fleet against actual opponents. Maya straightened her shoulders. We don't have a choice. If we do nothing, Earth becomes a mining colony. Everything we've built, everything we are, it all gets stripped away while the consortium pats itself on the back for guiding us. Harrison studied her face. What are you proposing, Commander? We maintain the deception until the last possible moment. Let them think we're powering down our struggling ships as requested. Maya's eyes gleamed with determination. Then we show them exactly what humanity has accomplished with their generous gift. The next 72 hours were a blur of activity. The 16 ships of the Phoenix fleet were moved to hidden positions throughout the solar system. Pilots and crews ran continuous drills, pushing the neural interfaces to their limits. The symbiotic connections between humans and ships deepened with each exercise, reaching levels of integration that would have horrified the rigidly hierarchical consortium. Meanwhile, Earth's official representatives communicated full cooperation with the approaching fleet. Yes, They would power down their partially restored vessels. Yes, they understood this was for their own safety. Yes, they looked forward to the consortium's generous assistance. On the eve of the consortium's arrival, Maya stood on the bridge of the Phoenix, now hidden in the shadow of Saturn's rings. Through the neural link, she could feel the ship's anticipation mirroring her own. "Are you nervous?" Dr. Santos asked, making final adjustments to the neural interface. Maya considered the question. "No," she said finally. "For 3 years, they'd believed exactly what we wanted them to believe. They think we're harmless, helpless. Tomorrow, they learn the truth." Santos nodded slowly. "The other pilots are reporting unusual activity in the neural links. The ships are communicating with each other, forming connections beyond what we designed." "Is it dangerous?" "Just the opposite. Efficiency and coordination have increased by 22% across the fleet." Santos hesitated. "It's almost as if the ships themselves want to protect Earth." Maya smiled, feeling the Phoenix's presence in her mind. "Alert, ready, resolute. Then let's not disappoint them." As the consortium fleet entered Earth orbit the next morning, they found exactly what they expected. A primitive world with a handful of barely functional ships powered down as instructed. Ambassador Vrax, resuming personal command for this momentous occasion, transmitted his message planet-wide. "People of Earth, the Galactic Consortium has arrived to assist your world during this difficult transition. Your efforts to utilize our technological gifts, while commendable, have demonstrated the need for more direct guidance. Consortium vessels will now assume protective responsibilities for your planet." The massive Harvest-class ships began moving into position, their extraction equipment preparing to deploy. That's when Maya gave the order that would change humanity's place in the galaxy forever. "Phoenix Fleet, awaken." The revelation. The consortium flagship's sensors registered something impossible. 16 vessels suddenly appearing from what had been empty space, their hulls absorbing light and scanning waves. Before Ambassador Vrax could process this development, the ships moved with a synchronicity that defied conventional piloting capabilities. "Impossible," he whispered, compound eyes widening as the vessels, the very ships his people had sabotaged and gifted to Earth, formed a perfect blockade between the consortium fleet and the planet below. "This is Lieutenant Commander Maya Chen of the United Earth Defense Force." Maya's voice transmitted across all frequencies. "Your harvest ships will power down immediately and withdraw to a minimum distance of 1 million kilometers from Earth." Vrax's mandibles clicked rapidly in agitation. "Commander Chen, you appear to be operating vessels you cannot possibly understand. Power down for your own safety before you cause a tragic accident." Through the neural link, Maya felt the Phoenix's amusement at the alien's condescension. The ship's consciousness had grown more distinct over the months of partnership, developing a personality that complemented her own. "No, Ambassador," she replied calmly. "I don't think we will." To demonstrate her point, Maya directed a single thought through the neural interface. The Phoenix responded instantly, executing a maneuver that should have been physically impossible, rotating on multiple axes simultaneously while maintaining perfect position. Around Earth, the 15 other ships of the fleet performed equally impossible feats of navigation, their movements so perfectly coordinated they seemed like a single organism. On the consortium flagship's bridge, alarms began to sound. "High Counselor," a technician called to Vrax, "we're detecting energy signatures unlike anything in our database. The human ships are generating power levels exceeding our battle cruisers." "Preposterous," Vrax snapped. Those vessels were deliberately crippled. Their power cores were limited to 30% capacity at most. Maya smiled as the Phoenix shared the consortium's communications through the neural link. "Actually, Ambassador, we fixed that, along with everything else you broke before handing them over." To emphasize her point, she directed a single targeting pulse at the consortium flagship, a harmless but unmistakable demonstration that the Phoenix could have destroyed Vrax's vessel at any moment. "How?" Vrax demanded, his translator struggling to convey his mixture of shock and outrage. Those interfaces were designed specifically to reject non-consortium neural patterns. "That was your first mistake," Maya replied. "You designed these ships to be controlled. We helped them become partners." Through the fleet-wide neural network, Maya coordinated with the other 15 pilots. As one, the Phoenix fleet surrounded the 3 Harvest-class ships, the massive resource extractors now looking vulnerable rather than imposing. "Your second mistake," Maya continued, "was assuming that because we're younger than your civilization, we're less capable. Humanity has always excelled at one thing above all others: Ambassador, adaptation." Across the neural link, Maya felt a surge of pride, not just her own, but the Phoenix as well. The ship had memories of its previous existence, of being treated as a tool rather than a sentient partner. It remembered being deliberately damaged, discarded as obsolete, and it remembered awakening to Maya's mind, finding a pilot who didn't seek to control but to collaborate. "The Consortium High Council will not tolerate this insult," Vrax warned, though his tone had lost its confidence. "If you fire upon our vessels, the full might of the Galactic Consortium will descend upon Earth." Maya directed the Phoenix to transmit the visual feed to all Consortium ships. The image showed a Consortium battle cruiser from 3 years ago, secretly recorded during one of their early visits to Earth. Side by side with it was the Phoenix, once a discarded, sabotaged husk, now a vessel that outclassed its former masters in every measurable way. "We're not going to fire on you, Ambassador," Maya said. "We're going to escort you home. But first, let's renegotiate our relationship." 7 tense hours later, Maya sat across from Vrax in the orbital station's conference room. The Consortium fleet had withdrawn to the agreed-upon distance, their Harvest ships powered down. "The Consortium cannot accept these terms," Vrax said, his normally smooth translator voice strained with suppressed fury. "You demand access to our technological database, mutual defense agreements, and recognition as equals. Your species has barely left its own solar system." Maya leaned forward. "And yet here we are, with 16 ships that outperform your entire fleet. Ships you discarded as trash. Imagine what we could do with vessels we build ourselves." Through her neural link, maintained even at this distance, the Phoenix sent a pulse of amusement and pride. The ship had opinions about the negotiations, which Maya found herself incorporating into her strategy. "The High Council will never," Vrax began. "The High Council is welcome to try again with a larger fleet," Maya interrupted. "But I don't think they'll like the outcome any better. You underestimated humanity once, Ambassador. I wouldn't recommend doing it twice." Vrax's compound eyes studied her for a long moment. "You've changed the balance of power in this sector," he said finally. "Not just with technology, but with approach. The neural symbiosis you've achieved." His mandibles clicked rapidly. "Some on the Council will see it as an abomination. Others will be fascinated. Then perhaps it's time for the Consortium to adapt," Maya suggested, "or risk becoming obsolete themselves." 3 days later, the treaty was signed. Earth was recognized as a sovereign power within the sector. The exploitative mining agreements were nullified, replaced with fair trade terms. And most significantly, humanity was acknowledged as a technological innovator with unique contributions to offer the galactic community. As the Consortium fleet departed, Maya stood on the Phoenix's observation deck, watching through both her eyes and the ship's sensors. "They'll be back," Admiral Harrison said, joining her at the viewport. "This isn't over." "No," Maya agreed. "It's just beginning." Through the neural link, she felt the Phoenix's consciousness brush against her own. No longer just a partnership, but a friendship unlike anything humanity had previously imagined. The ship shared her vision of the future. Earth vessels exploring the galaxy, humans and their symbiotic ships discovering worlds and civilizations the rigid Consortium had never bothered to understand. The Consortium had intended their gift of damaged ships to keep humanity dependent and subservient. Instead, they had provided the very tools that would redefine humanity's place among the stars. They had sold Earth-rusted warships as a joke. Now, they would watch as those same ships transformed the galaxy.